majority of this episode was recorded before the untimely news of Kobe Bryant's passing. Obviously, it's been worldwide news across the globe, and it's still a surreal experience, just given the tragic nature of the circumstances of Bryant and all 9 of the passengers who died in that helicopter crash on Sunday. I don't have any profound words of wisdom or anything else of that nature. I think it touched the nerve with so many people across the globe just because of circumstances and the reason. Well, not necessarily the reason, but like the circumstances of trying to be supportive of your child and get to his daughter Gianna's basketball game with her friends and their family members. I think that's part of what resonated with a number of people that aren't even sports fans that have come to me to talk about what transpired. For me, what I recall out of all of this is the fact that Kobe was the consummate athlete in terms of perfecting his craft, because even though you would say that trying to emulate the greatest basketball player in all time of Michael Jordan is a goal to aspire to, Kobe was one of those few people who actually truly believed he could reach that summit. And, that's one of the things you look for in athletes, and the fact that they believe that they can achieve the impossible. And more often than not, they don't. But Kobe's one of the rare athletes that came close enough, and through the journey and perfecting his craft, gained the respect of everyone around him as he rose through the ranks as a teenager, playing in Philly, making it to the league as a teenager, playing his 20 years in the NBA as you saw him grow as an adult and a leader. I think, in making that transition to the next phase of life where he's doing more than basketball, even though he's still promoting the game, promoting women's basketball to a degree that you don't really see out of former basketball players, getting into different business ventures, making the transition process similar to what Magic Johnson has done as well. You see how much the community in Los Angeles has been impacted by it. So all around, it is just a tragic circumstances, and thoughts and prayers, obviously, without question, go out to all 9 people and their families involved in the helicopter crash. All I can say is that, it's just a reminder of how much we can't take for granted the opportunities we have in life, and to make the most of things as we go along. And, that's all any of us can ask for, is just to try to provide the best life we can for ourselves and our families, and, just take the time to appreciate your loved ones. So that's all I have to say on the matter. I mean, there's so much more I can go into, but, it's just, there's not much in the way of words of solace that can be provided when you have a tragedy of this nature. And, all any of us can do is just try to find some measure of contentment and understanding, and just try to make the most of what we have in our lives, and appreciate the loved ones while you have them in your lives. But that's all for now that I have to offer, at least, and we'll resume with the remainder of the program. Thank you.
Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest in sports news, fantasy analysis, and opinions. Don't forget the hot takes. Can't have a sports show without hot takes these days. What about hot cakes, though? I want some hot cakes. Now, here's your host, ready to jump into the thick of things, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, everybody. We are a week away from the big game. And the reason why I'm saying the big game is because the NFL has a copyright on what we refer to as a super, you know the rest. So, yeah, you cannot actually say in conjunction the two words together. Otherwise, the NFL lawyers start sending you very, very not so nice letters on it. So I'm trying not to get fined. Why are other places able to say it? Mainly because ESPN and Fox are some of the few places where you can actually say that. And obviously NFL Network gets away with it. But for everyone else, and even when you're advertising for the super party, if you will, they have to use code words such as the big game. Yes, I know. Ridiculous, but absolutely true. So, from here on out, I will keep trying to refer to it as the big game, just so I don't get fined. Apologies in advance. All right, so let's at least do an initial breakdown. We'll do a follow-up part 2 on this as we get closer to the big game. As we get closer, and we can do the full breakdown of what the final bet line ends up being between the 49ers and the Chiefs. Initially, this line came out at favoring the Chiefs by a point. Over-under was at 54.5. It looks like it's going to be creeping down to 54. Looks as though the public money so far, at least initially, it's coming in at least 70% on the Chiefs thus far. It could change as we get later on because the teams are going to be arriving tomorrow for the opening night of the Super Week. Oh man, I'm gonna slip up at some point. I just know it. But anyway, the public money's coming in on the Chiefs, so that line could start moving towards 2 points by the end of the week. But you have a very interesting matchup here. I mean, with the Chiefs, you know, you have a high-powered offense and a defense that has gotten steadily improved as they moved on from the second half of the year. One of the biggest things that I've noticed with the Chiefs, and even though their defense is still middle of the pack in terms of overall statistical analysis, they've improved tremendously. They've been the top 10 defense since week 14 of the regular season. And in large part, one of the biggest adjustments that former Giants defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo did, and I love Spags because Spags understands how to build out a team to make a Super Bowl run. He actually made the switch of having safety Tyrann Mathieu come in to play slot corner on certain downs and moved out Kendall Fuller from the slot corner position over to safety. And that move has tremendously improved the secondary to the point that they've actually been able to hold teams. Again, one of the biggest statistics that people have overlooked is the fact that they had an 8-game winning streak where the Chiefs defense held opponents to only scoring on less than 29% of their possessions. Since week 11, that ranks about third in the league. and they've only allowed a touchdown on 17% of those possessions, which is 7th in the league. Again, when you have a high-powered offense the way the Chiefs do, one of the biggest things that they actually have to do is basically slow the bleeding. I mean, in years past, the Chiefs' defense was so bad. They had to win a shootout, courtesy of Patrick Mahomes, and win games 35-31 or even higher sometimes. They needed Mahomes to throw for 4 touchdown games. Now, with that all being said, Chiefs are lucky to even be in this game. Almost had the slip there. The Chiefs are very much fortunate to be in this game because, by all rights and accounts, the Chiefs should have been eliminated by the Texans, if not for, and again, I'll make this announcement,
Bill O'Brien is a terrible head coach. Again, Bill O'Brien is a terrible head coach.
Because there is no way in a playoff game, spotting a team 24 points, that you should ever be allowed to come back from that game unless it's a spectacular choke job. And even then, to come back in one quarter against a team shows how incompetent you're actually being coached. Because that there is under no circumstances, even the greatest playoff comeback of all time before the Chiefs game, when people bring up the Bills-Oilers, there were other circumstances involved with Frank Reich leading the Bills on that comeback. I mean, the Bills made a number of plays throughout the second half to get that even close and to force it into overtime. There were a number of things. The Chiefs made that comeback in less than 30 minutes of actual real time. It was less than that for game time, but in terms of real time, from the people saying it's over for the Chiefs to, oh my God, Patrick Mahomes is amazing. The Chiefs are going to take this. Literally, that happened in a half hour. So let's talk about this a little bit further. The Chiefs had their home playoff game, courtesy of the Dolphins beating the Patriots in Week 17 and knocking New England out of having a first round bye in the playoffs, changing the dynamic of the playoffs entirely. And I think probably is the biggest reason why the Chiefs are in this game, besides
Bill O'Brien being a terrible head coach.
At the end of the day, you can credit Patrick Mahomes for being the best quarterback in the league. As I've stated time and again, there's no doubt he's number one. There's no one close. It's him, and then there's everyone else right now. There was a time when you could say that about Aaron Rodgers, and then there's everyone else. Mahomes is even at Rodgers' peak. I still would take Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers at his peak, which is insane because there was a point in time where I actually would consider Aaron Rodgers to be on the same level of Joe Montana and Dan Marino and John Elway in terms of overall greatness. And yes, I know New England fans, you're going to scoff at the idea that I don't think Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm sorry, I don't. I know he is an all-time great quarterback. TB12 truly is, but no, not on the same level as those guys. It's a different era, but that's a whole another conversation. To be perfectly honest. So, what do we have on our hands here? We have a matchup between the best quarterback in the league and the best defense in the league. Usually, you don't see this matchup coming up in the big game. At some point, one or the other gets knocked out just because of the law of averages. It just doesn't hold up where you get the number one guy versus the number one defense. And the reason why I say Patrick Mahomes is the number one quarterback in the league is that he, again, when you look at the numbers, has had the best start to a career than basically any other quarterback in history. Through 35 starts, Mahomes ranks first all-time in passing touchdowns with 87, passing yards per attempt at over 9.3 yards per attempt, passing yardage, he's over 10,600 yards, and he's second per pass attempt in terms of yards behind Kurt Warner. Again, Kurt Warner playing with the greatest show on turf, and Mahomes plays at an outdoor stadium, and also had a fractured kneecap this year, by the way. People forget about that. Like, Patrick Mahomes missed time this year and still put up these ridiculous numbers with a fractured kneecap. Had a dislocated kneecap. It's like I don't know what else to say, because there was a point this year with Mahomes injured where the Chiefs Super Bowl odds went to plus two. Plus 2,200 is where the Chiefs Super Bowl odds went, and I wouldn't even touch that line even for $5. If you tell me that a quarterback had a dislocated kneecap and would come back and play as well as Patrick Mahomes did and run for a touchdown the way he did against the Texans and against the Titans with that 27-yard scamper into the end zone that made all the highlight packages for the past week, I don't know what to tell you, folks. Miracles can happen, but I mean that was something else by Mahomes. I mean, even if you adjust for like the different eras of quarterbacks in terms of how their passer rating grades out on average, Mahomes through 35 starts, like the only guys that are comparable would be, again, Kurt Warner and Dan Marino. I mean, it's hard to argue with the numbers. And when you actually see him perform on the field, you see greatness. One of the things that people, they may not want to admit, but if Mahomes wins the Super Bowl, oh, there we go, first slip. Oh well, hopefully it doesn't catch. If Mahomes wins this game, you actually have to put him already on trajectory of going into the Hall of Fame. As ridiculous as that sounds for a quarterback that, again, has only been starting for 2 years. It's absurd. But, again, not out of the realm of possibility. Just being honest, folks. That's just the way it's shaping up. So, to go into just the how he stepped up even further. Prior to the postseason, he had, he still managed to finish fourth in the league in pass yards per attempt at 8.3 and passing yards per game at 288. When he was still recovering from an injury. In the divisional round against the Texans, he went 23 of 35 for 321 and 5 touchdowns. Again, Bill O'Brien is a terrible head coach. But even with the Titans game, he also went 23 of 35 for 294 and 3 touchdowns to win the AFC title game, along with the scramble that still has everyone talking. This is the reason why the Chiefs are favored. He is incredible. Now, the difference here is from a pressure standpoint, Mahomes has only been pressured on about 29% of his dropbacks this year. That grades out to about the fourth lowest among NFL QBs this entire season. I mean, he's had excellent line play throughout the season and postseason. However, even when he did get pressure, Mahomes only took about a sack on 10% of those dropbacks because of his scrambling ability and improving on getting rid of the football. Now, here's the thing. San Francisco ranked, in terms of their defense, they ranked second in the league in expected points and also in pressure rate. Also, did I mention they were also second in sack rate? So they had a higher percentage of pressure rate than just about every other team in the league, and a sack rate in terms of NFL teams with 8.7%. In terms of what San Francisco is able to do, they confuse you at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, they got Nick Bosa as the number 2 overall pick this year, but they've got 4 pass rushers on that defensive line that can get as much of the pressure as they can. So they've got guys that are easily capable of double-digit sacks per year on that defensive line because of all the draft picks the 49ers have stockpiled post Kaepernick era of tanking and being able to have a stockpile of picks. Granted, 49ers did an excellent job drafting everybody, but they did have a wealth of picks over the years to build out their offensive and defensive lines, which the Giants should have been able to do, but that's a whole nother story. Again, sour grapes on my part. In terms of facing elite pressure, though, this is the toughest matchup they're going to go up against all year because Mahomes and the Chiefs, they've, in terms of teams that were in the top 12 of pressure, Mahomes has completed 67% of his passes, averaged 7.8 yards per attempt, 253 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, and 20 rush yards. Again, numbers come down, but he's still putting up numbers. This is the crux of the problem for San Francisco. Can they slow down the Chiefs enough with their defense to give Garoppolo and the offense enough opportunities to wear out the Chiefs' defense? Because the truth of the matter is that, the 49ers' rush defense isn't as elite as their pass defense. But I don't want to automatically concede that there's no way the Chiefs can't have a big passing game against the 49ers defense. As great as Richard Sherman is, he's only going to be able to cover one guy. And even then, I still think that the Chiefs don't match up or find ways of moving around Tyreek Hill into the slot and other parts of the field so that Sherm isn't covering him the entire way through. I think the Chiefs find ways of getting Tyreek Hill into different spots on the field to make life very difficult for the 49ers secondary and force other people to pick him up rather than have it be a straight out-and-out matchup against Sherman. I don't think it's even remotely in their best interest. I think when you have Sammy Watkins on the opposite side there, you can have him outside in the slot to take away Sherman because, truth be told, Sammy Watkins woke up out of the deep freeze against the Titans with his 10 targets and that deep bomb. You have to respect the fact that the Chiefs can hit the big play with Sammy Watkins in the back, coming out of the backfield and even splitting out wide. Watkins has that game-changing speed. So with him healthy coming into this game, it makes a difference. It forces the 49ers to have to account for everyone on the field because you have two speedsters and Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, and you have Travis Kelce, who can also line up in the slot and do damage from that tight end position because, yeah, he can burn you deep down the field, but he can also gas you. Now, the one caveat that the 49ers defense is prepared for is they've been practicing against an elite number one tight end because Travis Kelce and George Kittle have been 1-2 in tight ends for the past 2 years. So the 49ers are used to matching up in practice against an elite tight end. I don't think that's going to intimidate Quan Alexander whatsoever as the primary coverage linebackers for the 49ers. I think Alexander's going to be on Kelce, and I think he's going to do a good job. I just think it's a tough matchup, so Kelce is going to get his touches. I don't expect him to have anywhere near the performance he had against the Titans, but, you know, at the same time, he is going to be a factor because he's going to be pulling guys away from what they would typically want to be able to do with the different coverage fronts that the 49ers are going to put up with Robert Saleh, their defensive coordinator. So, to me, the key here is, you know, the Chiefs play action, and the Chiefs use play action at one of the highest rates of the league. They use it on 31% of their dropbacks, and Mahomes has a 105 point rating using play action. And, you know, it's one of those situations where the Chiefs use the run to justify passing. I think the Chiefs are going to end up having to run on this 49ers defense at least earlier on to keep them honest. Because the league average for play action passing, quarterback ratings at 97 for play action passes. 49ers defense, they shut teams down. I mean, the 49ers quarterbacks are using play action against 49ers defense. They're at a 94 rating with a 6-yard average per pass. They don't. They actually knock teams down in terms of being able to throw the football. It's really the run game where teams have had success against 49ers. And even then, that was when the 49ers weren't healthy. With the 49ers having Quan Alexander back healthy, it makes a tremendous difference for that defense. That's where I think the Chiefs still are going to have a bit of a struggle. But I truly believe it's the case of Patrick Mahomes may actually have to be the leading rusher for the Chiefs this year, because using the run to start setting up some of these throws, I think is going to be vital. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have to scramble to free up some of the downfield passing attack, similar to what Russell Wilson is able to do in Seattle. Because to me, the blueprint for beating the 49ers is closer to what the Seattle Seahawks end up accomplishing against the 49ers. Because to me, the 49ers have been susceptible to Seattle, and Seattle is such a heavily grounded running attack. But the caveat is Seattle has the deep big play possibility, and with Russell Wilson, you know, he can scramble too. I think that's the game plan of going after the 49ers, because Mahomes has great arm strength, and he has a great ability to complete passes down the field. I mean, league average wide, if you're throwing deep down the field over 15 yards, your average completion rate is under 42%. Mahomes is at 47%, and again, he has a touchdown rate of 12% throwing deep down the field compared to a league average of 7%. Now, the case being with San Francisco's defense is the average QB rating throwing deep down the field is only 78%. Large part of that is due to Richard Sherman. He goes out of his way of cutting off angles and lanes for wide receivers to get to on deep pass plays. It's one of the hardest things I've seen teams have trouble with against 49ers is they can't run the football and they can't throw deep down the field. So what do? They end up getting caught with getting out of rhythm, and that's what happened to Green Bay. Green Bay couldn't run the football effectively. Aaron Rodgers isn't the scrambler he used to be, and the passing game ended up becoming a case of Devontae Adams try to win a one-on-one battle, because if he doesn't win the one-on-one battle, the pass play's not going anywhere. And the Packers were out of the game before halftime because of that fact. I just look at this as a case of, with the Chiefs offense, they have to find ways of running the football to at least give themselves an opportunity of hitting San Francisco with some big plays down the field. Now, since week 9, and again, a lot of these numbers had to do with Quan Alexander being hurt, but they have allowed 350 rushing yards to quarterbacks, and 208 yards had been to quarterbacks using design runs. So, again, the reason why these numbers are a bit subjective, in my opinion, is the fact that you're going up against Kyler Murray, you're going up against Lamar Jackson, you're going up against Russell Wilson. I mean, those are three of the best scrambling QBs in the league. Patrick Mahomes has added that to his arsenal, and I fully expect him to try to take advantage of that fact that he could scramble and make life difficult for the 49ers defense, because I think that's the key to moving the football and having success throughout the game. If not, then I think it becomes more of a 49ers type game versus the Chiefs being able to do what they need to get done. Now, flip it over to the 49ers side of the football. 49ers on offense, and people keep knocking on Jimmy G as though Garoppolo can't play. Guy can play. Bill Belichick does not designate you as the heir apparent to Tom Brady without having good cause. Bill Belichick, if he had his way, and I have to say, if it wasn't for Tom Brady pulling the power play that he did and Robert Kraft going along with it, we could be in the midst of the continuation of the Pats dynasty for another decade plus, with Garoppolo under helm for the Patriots, as opposed to riding out the wave with Tom Brady. Because as much as people want to criticize Garoppolo for not throwing too many passes against Green Bay, they didn't need to throw the football to win that game. The 49ers run game, again, they run it at the second highest clip of the league. But from an offensive efficiency standpoint, they were number 2 in the league, and they were number 2 in scoring behind Baltimore. The Chiefs are the third ranked offense in terms of points per game. Baltimore was number 1. San Francisco was number 2. They were all, the Chiefs were just under 30 points per game. San Francisco's over 30 points per game. They were at 30.2. Baltimore was just a tad over 31 points. But those were the top 3 offenses in the league. Like, people are sleeping on the 49ers thinking that this is just a purely defensive team. They score points in bunches. And because of their defense, it's the reason why they were a top 3 defense the entire year. The points allowed is not there either. Now, because the 49ers control the game clock, they limit the amount of plays per game. The 49ers only average 62 plays per game. That was 20th in the league. Chiefs are only 60, but part of the reason why the Chiefs are running so few plays is because they're hitting you with so many big plays that they don't have the ball a lot. They're just doing a whole bunch of short drives, and then they force you to try to grind out plays down to get back into the game. But the way the 49ers operate, because the Chiefs usually allow teams to run about 66 plays per game, that ranked 24th in the league. 49ers, not only do they run some of the fewest plays per game at just under 63 plays per game, they also held their opponents to under 60 plays per game, which was 4th in the league. The 49ers shrink the clock by running it as much as they do, and they don't allow you to hit big pass plays on them. So that's what happens when you're going up against them. They run the ball at the second highest clip in the league, second only behind Baltimore. And yes, as a result, they throw it. They're ranked 31st in amount of pass plays called. Only Baltimore ran fewer pass plays. I mean, it's one of those things where they force you into situations where they make you have to pass against them. Running the ball against 49ers is actually the better way of having success, but because they grind down the clock, they force teams to panic and essentially empty their gas tank, trying to extend games by throwing their way back into it, and you end up running up against a brick wall because, again, Richard Sherman shuts down teams, and the rest of the 49ers secondary, not too shabby either. So when it comes right down to it, this comes down to a case of, can the Chiefs slow down the 49ers run game? Now, they were able to slow down Derrick Henry, but part of that I still contribute to Ryan Tannehill not being able to throw anything outside the box to make the Chiefs pay for loading up the box completely and overselling to stop the run. So let's talk about the 49ers run game. Tevin Coleman separated his shoulder during the NFC title game and is doubtful for the big one against the Chiefs. I mean, truth be told, Tevin Coleman ended up falling out of this rotation anyway. It ended up being Raheem Mostert's backfield by and large. But Coleman was a nice change of pace back, so if they had him even close to 100%, I'd pencil him in, and I could see him having a factor. But the problem is that separated shoulder usually takes at least a month to heal up properly, and even then, for a full recovery, you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Having 2 weeks to recover, I just can't see it happening. And especially for the running back position where you got people tugging and grabbing at the ball, I can't see San Francisco risking playing Coleman when he's clearly going to be compromised. I don't care what they say. He can be healthy enough to play, but is he going to be nearly as effective as he was before? I highly doubt it. So I can't see Coleman being a factor in the run game here. So that puts the onus on Raheem Mostert, who had the monster game of 29 carries for 220 yards and 4 scores against the Packers. Against the Vikings, he went for 22 carries and 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. From a fantasy perspective, Mostert's performances rank only behind Ricky Waters just destroying the Chargers in the postseason as the Niners won that Super Bowl that year in '93. But it's not a case of the Chiefs are going to be definitely scared of Raheem Mostert. I mean, most of the 49ers running backs are interchangeable, so you can have a Matt Breida game. Jeff Wilson could come into play here. The 49ers have enough backs that they can pose different looks for the Chiefs' defense. The only versatility that you got a little bit more out of Coleman was Coleman did have more essentially big play breakability to break open a big run, but Mostert's been so productive and so heavy-handed with being able to slam into that hole and wear out a defense that the 49ers haven't had to rely on having a big run play to jumpstart their offense. Their methodical nature allows them to just basically sledgehammer opponents into submission, and Mostert has been highly effective in that role of the zone cut blocking scheme that Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, employs. So, again, the 49ers should be in a position where they should be able to rack up 150 yards rushing against the Chiefs. Similar to the way I thought the Titans would be able to do it. Now, I have far more confidence in Garoppolo throwing down the field as needed when the Chiefs stack the box, which I expect they will, to at least show some face that they're not afraid of tackling Raheem Mostert head on and slowing them down. They're willing to sacrifice their bodies to get that win. And I'm very much curious to see how that matchup plays out, because if the 49ers are unable to get their run game going, this becomes an entirely different game where Jimmy G is going to be relied upon to throw for nearly 300 yards to win the game for the 49ers. I think, personally, that the 49ers are still going to be able to run the football at will on the Chiefs. As well as the Chiefs defense has played, they still have not had an offense with the balance that the 49ers possess, where you have passing options and a quarterback that can deliver the ball accurately and consistently, along with the massive run game. That's where the 49ers' versatility, I think, will end up burning the Chiefs defensively. Now, with that being said, because of how much the 49ers run the football, I have a tougher time siding with the notion that this game is going to go over the 54 total. Based off of the number of plays run, I think this should be closer to probably a 52 to 51 type line rather than 54. So to me, taking the under makes sense here, because I don't see the Chiefs having enough possessions to make a difference in hitting that over. Unless, of course, they get a special teams touchdown or a defensive touchdown. I just can't see the Chiefs offense forcing enough of a hand to I just can't see it. I really can't see it unless the Chiefs get some well, it's going to be more than one. They got to get a couple of chunk plays of more than 20 yards gained to have the pace enough to get up to a 54 line. I think with San Francisco, the way their defense is playing right now and being healthy, I think the under hits here with the under 54, and I still like the 49ers to win this one outright. Still have a number of factors to weigh in upon, and we're going to get into some of the aspects of Super Bowl props and also start doing the DK and FanDuel pricing for the single game on the big game soon enough. But we're gonna get into this a little bit further. We're gonna start looking at the players to target, but it's still early enough that we can start talking about it during the week. But that's all I have for my initial thoughts on the game. Definitely more to come, without question, as we move along. Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I could see out of this one is that we're going to get an entertaining game. And as much as people hate the Patriots, they've had provided some entertaining games, and then last year happened. The less said about the Rams-Patriots game, the better. So that'll be all for now. Until next time, when we talk a little bit more about the big game, and also want to get into finally breaking down the baseball and everything that went on with the Astros and moving forward, because baseball has got a lot of questions to answer for folks, myself included, because there's still quite a bit that we don't fully grasp as to how it was handled with Major League Baseball's investigation. But that's all for now. Have a good one, folks, and we'll catch up later as we get closer to the game next Sunday. So have a good one, and till next time.